I'm very happy to be here because it's almost 20 years ago that the WAGNER Group presented a unique fire protection approach here in Essen on the Essen security. And believe me, we are pretty proud that we are still in the business. And this approach that was in 1998, something to, let me state what Mr. Wagner says, was something to laugh about, made its way into an industrial fire protection tool. And I was speaking here 2 years ago, presenting the basic technology. 2 years later, we decided not to start from scratch again and to bother you with how it works. We want to give you a highlight that happened in between. We managed to convince the authorities in Northern America to allow this protection technology to be installed in one, to be precise, in two, the other one is in Canada, installations. And we felt this is worth a little speech and presentation what he did. Before I start, have a look at this little summary of what it is about. The key sentence, battery is low. The key sentence I want to highlight here, I felt a little bit like Christopher Columbus bringing this approach to the US because it was almost unknown, and it did feel like a real spectacle how we are protecting automated warehouses, especially deep freeze warehouses here in Germany and in Europe, and even in Asia and in the Middle East. But it was not known up to now in the US or in Canada. And so finally, America, maybe this is a bit of an exaggeration, finally America discovered low oxygen or oxygen reduction technology as a means of fire protection. Just to give you a little bit of a background, this company, WAGNER, is in fire protection business for 40 years, and we are celebrating our 40 years anniversary here at the security. And there's a slide later on where I invite you to join us for a snack to celebrate with us. And both WAGNER's father and son still own the company and run it and direct the fate of the company in the direction that you're witnessing now with me. So, into this project, where is this installation? And it came to my surprise, it's the most far-away place I could think of. It's in Washington State, in a valley called the Tri-Cities at the Columbia River, where they grow vegetables, where they grow potatoes. And believe it or not, there's a huge demand of storing French fries. Millions of French fries. And there was a saying in the first interviews, we are building up a logistics center, and if this is interrupted or even destroyed, you will have for the next 3 months only salad at McDonald's in Seattle. This explained to me the importance and explained also why the client was looking for something that protects this logistic hub forever. I mean, I didn't guarantee forever, be sure, because in a country like the US, you have to be very careful in terms of liabilities. The minute you guarantee something, you have a lawyer behind you watching that you're really doing what you promise. And this picture here shows where, what it was about when I first visited the site. Ground, pure ground. And in the meantime, they have built up a huge freezer warehouse. And in German we say it's der größte Kühlschrank, the biggest fridge on earth. We never investigated on Google whether or not there is an even bigger one, but the numbers are explaining a lot. They store more than 110,000 pallets of French fries in this huge warehouse. It's a figure, if you have not seen it, it's unbelievable how big that is. And the other figure is even more fascinating. It's a warehouse with a volume of space where you put the pallets in of 1 million cubic meters. I do not dare even to give you an example what that means, but if you are standing in front of that 45-meter high building, you look so small. Even trucks look like Lego tools. And it's fully automated, which means hardly anybody is needed to run the operation, hardly anybody is needed to go inside, which is very important because different to how we look at this technology here in Germany and in Europe, the health issue, meaning the health issue for people working in this environment, is taking extremely serious. And so the ease of allowing this installation came into the picture when they mentioned it's completely automated and only authorized personnel, specially educated and trained and equipped, will go inside this area that will be protected by a low oxygen environment. And as I said, it's all frozen food. I didn't write down French fries because it sounds more sophisticated to talk about frozen food. And we managed to put that warehouse into operation last summer. So it's not something that we are planning. It's up and running. It's gone through the so-called baby phase. They are in full operation, and I can tell you they run out of capacity right now, and they are planning to go even further to make it even bigger. Now, to give you a flavor for those that might have an interest to step into something like that as well, you need to be pretty patient. If you see, first contacts to us came in October or August 2013, 2 years ahead of time. And don't think that we took it as a contract. It was all about explaining how do we convince the local authorities in any means that this is a proven technology, that it is a serious approach and will not cause any harm neither to people and also neither to the products, meaning that there will be any fire. And you see from the schedule, it went through a lot of exercises on engineering level, and I may add, free of charge. So it was a pure investment of Mr. Wagner to say, we'll give it a try. The outcome is uncertain because there's a crucial date in here that is the so-called permit. And you see, it took almost a year to get the so-called alternative material and method approval from the local authorities, meaning the Washington State, the City of Richland authority had to give approval. And it was only possible, I believe, because with almost 20 years of experience in this field of low oxygen, of oxygen reduction systems, the authorities felt comfortable by the way we could provide proof from Germany and Europe, by German and European authorities, that they had looked very, very carefully onto this approach and have given green light to use it. And this maybe is important also as a replacement for any other means of extinguishing. So if someone might have the question, is this oxygen reduction system the only protection means in the warehouse? The answer is yes, but is added by high sensitive smoke detection that covers and will give alarm even if slightest proportion of heat and pyrolysis, meaning fire in the beginning, is monitored. So no sprinkler in the warehouse, and imagine a warehouse of 45 meters high with that enormous amount of rack space, the amount of sprinkler heads and meters, if not to say kilometers of steel pipe needed to operate it under sprinkler conditions. That is nothing a client wants to pay for. Plus, I learned that deep freeze warehouse operators hate fire, of course, but hate at the same time water. Because the very moment you have a problem with the well-functioning water systems, for instance, you have a sprinkler head that goes off, a pipe that breaks, it's what the Americans call a pain in the ass to correct it and get the frozen stuff out again, not to talk about all the water that will immediately under minus 23 degrees Celsius freeze. And I've seen sites in the US which I would call an ice skating terrain, because they had incidents, according to Murphy's Law, always over the weekend, where water was going into the warehouse and they had like 30 centimeters of water in their ground. And believe me, even thinking on how to get that out is giving you a real headache. So the client was very happy that the authorities have given approval, and we could step into what we call the standard contractual approach with discussing contracts and so on. And then it went on pretty straightforward. If you see here material that got on site in January, it took just a couple of months to complete it in total, which did not mean that our team was 4 months on site. The installation is pretty neat, doesn't need that much installation work, so that goes hand in hand and straightforward. This picture was taken in 2015 when they started racking up the racking structure. Now, what were the challenges? And believe me, there were a lot of challenges, especially for a German company coming from a German family background to step across the Atlantic to a country that is completely unknown and which brought along a lot of difficulties. I mean, the official ones, clear as such. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no standard for this kind of approach in the US. So the US authorities, whether they liked it or not, had to make a reference to existing standards in Germany or in Europe. Unfortunately, we could bring along the German VDS to the States. They were accepted, and together with a professional engineer, a local one, the team of VDS and the local experts have given final approval to the local authorities. And in addition, believe it or not, our system was not designed to comply with the technical and mechanical standards on top of to the fire protection standards that were not existing. So we had to redesign our system to meet American standards like ASME for pressure tools, and of course UL standard to make it safe from electrical and component point of view. One of the biggest issues, and this is always making me, I could say, even laugh a little bit, it seems that Europeans and especially Germans are completely different than Americans. Why? Because here in Germany, if you enter a low oxygen area according to the standards that we created, you are allowed to enter an area down to a percentage of 13 volume percent. Below that value, you have to wear an oxygen mask. And to give you an idea, I visited the German Zugspitze this summer, which is 3,000 meters high, and the partial pressure, so the amount of thin air that we breathe into our lungs, corresponds to 15%. And I don't know if anybody of you has enjoyed this wonderful beer garden on the Zugspitze in the snow in the summer. You feel you are breathing a little bit harder, and if you start even going to the snow that there's around and do some fun with the kids, you start really acting fast, like you do when you go skiing. If you are flying in an aeroplane, they do a similar thing. They pressurize the cabin, and all of you, I expect, know this safety instruction: when pressure drops, there will be oxygen and mask and blah, blah, blah. They are allowed to operate the cabin in a way that the partial pressure reaching your lungs is in between 15 to 16% as well, right? Hardly anybody knows that because we are not working on the flight, but feel free to ask the cabin crew. They will confirm what I've just said. So what do the US guys think? They think 19.5 is way too low. Below that value, they need breathing masks. So that's why I'm saying, it makes me laugh. I say, either the atmosphere is so much different here, the air that I breathe is much more dangerous, or we are much tougher. Thanks. And so this is still a fight that we have to go for. The good thing is this warehouse is automated, so hardly anybody goes inside. And I have to say, the customer, being very tough, said, I will use breathing masks just for the sake that I'm not ending up in a conflict with the official parties. All right. This is a summary of the objectives. I think those of you that start to think commercially will immediately understand this is what a client wants to have. No risk of losing either products or the processes. And as I said, this group of customers working in the freezer industry, they hate water as much as they hate fire. And I was talking about what does the system look like. It looks pretty neat. We have a machine room that produces the nitrogen that we feed through a pipe into the area, which is the warehouse. And it goes to the fans, so that we use the fans as transport mechanism, so there's not a full pipe length inside the warehouse, so pretty straightforward. And of course, the most essential systems are the oxygen monitors or sensors that give us an alarm signal if we are way too high in terms of fire protection, or if we are too low in terms of people protection. And so a machinery like that is now installed. And you see this is, I always say, good German mechanical engineering made US. So very solid vessels, very solid valves to live as long as possible. And I always hear Mr. Wagner saying, we are thinking in decades in terms of warranty, not in years. And I hope you can agree on that. A little bit of control racks just to give you a first flavor. And see, that's the warehouse, what it looks like 2 years later. Nice compound, and try to identify the trucks. These are the loading docks for the trucks, and you can see it's an enormous building. And finally, I always try to provocate a little bit. We don't want to extinguish. There are a lot of reasons where you need extinguishing, but fire prevention with oxygen reduction for us is the future. If you don't believe what I said, I'm still here, and I'm available for all of you in our hall 3 on booth D44 or 44? D44. You're more than welcome to see us.